Aloha! What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Omens. This is a segment on my channel that we check out the news worldwide and we kind of just dive into things that are happening with the earth and with the weather and with space or our atmosphere, and we check out the anomalies and we learn from them and we put them all together just so that we can determine how close we are to the apocalypse happening, basically. I want to thank everybody who's been leaving all kinds of really good links to different articles and videos and stuff in my community tab under the Omens section. Super appreciate it. And without any further ado, let's jump right into everything. Good to see everybody in the chat. What's up? I see everybody in the chat. Sky, good to see you. Looks like Gen2 gone. Sojio, not really here. Cake Town. I know Cake Town's been leaving some stuff too. All right, so I'm going to do some screen sharing and pull up my screen. We're going to capture, we're going to do some screen capturing. I'm going to show you some interesting things that are happening around the world right now. The first thing we're going to talk about is this article. This is sort of a segue. This is going to lead us into some of these other topics as far as the crazy weather that we've all been experiencing, especially with the heat and stuff like that. So this one right here is interesting. This says, as the tropics warm, some birds are shrinking. Now, it's not just birds. I've actually seen many different articles that talk about many different animal species that are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I've talked about this, and it's not just me, it's ancient religions and belief systems and cultures across time have talked about this being one of the signs and one of the omens that you're getting closer and closer to an apocalyptic event, which is that everything is getting smaller and smaller in the world. It's all shrinking as the pressure in our world increases, right? Since we live in a closed system and the atmosphere is increasing in pressure, that's having an adverse effect on life across the planet, basically. One of the things that it's doing is it's causing the heat, right? A lot of that pressure is causing more heat basically building up in our world, which we're going to talk a lot about in this episode. But another thing that happens is whenever that pressure builds up so strongly, it's pressing in on all sides. And with the lack of oxygen and other factors as well, life starts to shrink. And not just life, but lifespans start to shrink. And as our lifespans and as our physical stature starts to shrink, we begin to experience time quicker, right? Which sort of helps with the quickening of the days, right? We live during a time that I like to call the quickening. I'm not sure what other people would refer to it as, but yeah, so it says that as the tropics warm, some birds are starting to shrink. Animals are getting smaller and smaller. In general, there's interesting anomalies where some animals, especially deep sea animals, are turning up and they're gigantic. They're coming up from the depths of the ocean and they're huge. Well, we might check out some examples of that in just a bit. But Boogle, hey, thanks for the donation. Totally just saw that, Boogle. Appreciate you. All right, so this leads us into the tropics. The tropics, weird things are happening with the tropics over the past few decades. And I've done some research that talks about what's happening with the tropics. Basically, they're getting a lot hotter. Like this article right here says scientists sound an alarm over unheard of conditions off of the coast of England. And they say we could see mass mortality. And I believe what they're talking about is the mass mortality of fish and other creatures that live in the ocean as the ocean temperature gets hotter and hotter as it is. It's being documented that it's getting hotter and hotter, especially in certain places like Florida. It's up in the mid 90s right now, the actual temperature of the ocean water where people are out there swimming around in, right? So this is really interesting that the temperatures are getting a lot hotter. They are talking about how we could see mass mortality, but this is a sign and an omen. Not just fish are going to die in mass, but many other types of animal species in the ocean are right now currently dying in mass. They're washing up ashore all over the world, on the beaches of the world, all across the place. But this is going to lead into even more mortality in the form of humans and animals and other things that are dying too. So let's check out this stuff with the tropics. I found lots of interesting articles, and they all seem to be very conflicting, right? But the interesting thing is that they're talking about how the tropics, if you don't know what those are, so if you look at a map of the world, the Tropic of Cancer is that line that goes across at the top. So basically, you're familiar with like the equatorial line, right? Or the equator right there in the middle. Well, there's two other lines. There's one above that and one below that. The one above that is the Tropic of Cancer. And the Tropic of Cancer is the furthest north that the sun will travel before it's directly above during the northern hemisphere's summertime or the summer solstice, right? The Tropic of Capricorn, which is the one below the equator, that's the furthest that the sun will travel in the other direction towards the south. Those tropics, according to mainstream academics, they have an interesting cosmology, much different than my own, and far different from that of our ancestors and the old ways that many of us, that used to be commonplace and common knowledge in the world. But that's the perspective that I'm coming from. And just keep in mind, this is all my perspective and my experience that I like to share with people. So anyways, the things about the tropics in modern academics is that they're teaching that the tropics, dang, I had this highlighted. There it is. All right, this is super interesting. I'm going to check this out in just a second. So they're teaching that the tropics, that basically like it all depends on the tilt of the earth when it's facing the sun, which in and of itself is totally weird. And I've got all kinds of questions and, you know, points to be made about that. The earth tilting and wobbling and spinning and flying through a vacuum and stuff like that. But this is how they explain the tropics and the sun moving from one tropic to another tropic and back to create the cycle of a year, right? Well, those tropical lines are changing. Some articles that you read say that the tropics are shrinking, right? So some articles that I've pulled up, they're all conflicting, basically. I've seen articles that talk about how the tropics are shrinking, and they're actually like the northern one is going closer to the equator, and the southern one is also going closer to the equator. So that tropical zone is getting smaller and smaller and also hotter and hotter, which means that the heat in the tropics is actually expanding while the tropical lines themselves are shrinking. Other articles are inverse of that theory. Other articles actually talk about how the tropics are expanding and that they're moving steadily towards the poles and that they're getting wider and wider and wider. So there seems to be much disagreement on the internet at the very least as to whether or not the tropic lines are expanding or if they're shrinking. But it matters not in reading it as an omen, right? The thing that we should focus on is, are they constant? And the answer is no. The tropics are not constant. The tropics are moving and fluctuating, right? I've seen articles where it talks about how they're fluctuating and shrinking and how they're expanding, etc. Either way, check out this article. It says that we found a poleward shift, which means they're expanding, in the subtropical high-pressure belt during the early and late Cretaceous period, suggesting a poleward expansion of the Hadley circulation. The Hadley cells that they're talking about, the Hadley circulation or whatever, is basically how the equator gets really warm, and so that warm air rises and it creates these cellular currents basically that move outward from the equator. So it's an expansion of the Hadley circulation. In contrast, an equatorward shift of the belt was found during the mid-Cretaceous super greenhouse period, suggesting drastic shrinking of the Hadley circulation, or a shrinking of the tropics. So let's check this out. I want to show you this graph real quick. Now, we can, just like this, remember that movie? I might actually have to do this movie, but you remember that movie called The Day After Tomorrow, right? The Day After Tomorrow was an apocalyptic movie with Jake Gyllenhaal where there was a world storm, basically. And the interesting part about this, one of the interesting parts about this movie was that they had to call in, the governments of the world had to call in a paleoclimatologist, somebody who studied ancient erratic weather patterns going far back in history towards like apocalyptic times, like the time of the dinosaurs and stuff like that. And they called in this paleoclimatologist and they had to use his ancient model of what the weather was like before a cataclysmic event in order to figure out what's happening in the modern world. That's the time that we live in now. That's the truth in the movies that's being shown to us. So this is what we're going to do. I'm actually going to show you this here on the screen. You can see this is sort of a chart, and this is showing you the explosion of life and then the decline of life, right? So whenever you see the chart going up, that's the explosion. Life is growing and more types of animals and creatures are evolving and, making their appearance in the world. And then the straight line down, boom. That's whenever you have cataclysmic events that wipe life out, right? So there's about 4 major ones right here. And the article talks about the Cretaceous. So let's see if I can get over to the Cretaceous. Let's make this smaller. There we go. All right, cool. I'm actually going to move this over so we can see this. Or maybe I can make it really big. Maybe not. All right, cool. I'm just going to leave it right there and I'll just scooch it over. All right, cool. So boom, right next to my shoulder right here. This is the one that the article before this talked about when it says we haven't seen, it says that they saw these fluctuations, the expansion and the shrinking. The last time that we saw this was during the beginning of the Cretaceous period, which is marked by this green section right next to my shoulder right here with this dinosaur skull right there, right? So you can see at the very beginning, there's a drop, right? So whether or not the tropics shrank or expanded, they changed at this period in time when there is a drop in life. And then immediately after that drop, life started to grow again until you reach the middle, which is what the article said. During the middle of the Cretaceous period, we also saw either an expansion or contraction of the tropical lines on Earth, right? Or the tropics. So right there, there's a slight decrease, as you can see, and then after that, for a period of time, it remained about the same, and then it shoots up drastically until the end of the Cretaceous period, which is allegedly whenever they say that a huge asteroid came firing down from space and blew up the world and killed all the dinosaurs, basically, right? I have totally different theories about that. But regardless, what we're looking at is our future written out in the past. These things are all cyclical. They happen over and over again. They act like spirals, like time and history. It happens over and over again. We can look at this and we can get a good feel for how often these things occur, or at least the patterns of what happens in our world by looking at these types of charts. Now, let's move on to this next thing here. I looked it up and I asked Google, are the tropics moving? Are they expanding? Are they shrinking? And this article says Earth's tropics are expanding poleward, which means that it's getting wider and wider, right? And that the expansion is human caused. They're taking credit for that. That's fine, but whatever. It's driven by human caused changes to the ocean, according to new research. So this is really interesting that they're bringing the ocean into it. The ocean's going to play a huge part in the signs and the omens that are on the way and that are currently happening right now. So this other article right here, I'm going to take that one down. This other article says that if you look up Wikipedia, the Tropic of Cancer, it says that the Tropic of Cancer is currently drifting southward, which means it's shrinking. Cancer is the top one. So that according to Wikipedia, the Tropic of Cancer above the equator is moving towards the equator. Meanwhile, if you look at the Wikipedia article on the Tropic of Capricorn, it says that I'm not sure where it is here, but basically it says the Tropic of Capricorn is going northward, that it's getting smaller. So regardless, I don't know, they don't really have their stories together, but the tropics are in flux, okay? The North Magnetic Pole is moving. Our world is going into electromagnetic fluctuations time and time again that are getting stronger and stronger. They will tell us that it's because of the sun, and the sun is throwing up all of these coronal mass ejections towards us or whatever. I don't tend to blame the sun. That's fine. That's one possibility. But I say that the action lies with the earth itself. The earth is going into flux, right? Not the sun, which is a point of focus up there in the sky. This one, let's get into these heat waves. Europe heat waves. Wildfires are raging in Greece as the temperatures soar. This gets into the, I think the Alps. Yeah, the Swiss Alps also. The temperatures hit a high of 46.3 degrees Celsius in Sicily. So the climate is getting or the temperatures, I don't really like that word climate, but the temperatures are getting hotter and hotter. Scientists say that the climate is making heat waves last longer, more intense, more frequently. These are the types of signs that we should be looking for as far as the heat in the world getting hotter and hotter. Death Valley could reach the hottest temperature ever to be reliably measured on Earth. And I had a picture of this dude that took a picture in Death Valley, but look at all these different articles about the heat that is getting hotter and hotter across the world, right? From Phoenix, that just broke their record of all-time hottest consecutive days in a row of over 110 degrees or hotter in Arizona. And that record was set in 1974, and it's been broken. So since 1974, things are starting to go into flux. Now, interesting things. The 70s was an interesting time as far as records, in the world and things changing, especially the color spectrum, right? Those of you who were born in or before the 70s, you probably remembered that the sun was yellow, right? Kind of like how they show it right here when it's at sunset. The sun used to be depicted as yellow. It's no longer yellow. If you look up in the midday sun sky at noontime, you'll see a burning hot white sun with blue, right? Usually there's I'm able to see a ring of blue around the sun recently, but you can look it up. They will agree. NASA agrees that the sun has a little bit of blue in it, and maybe even a little bluish green color type of thing. And green we're going to talk about, which is really interesting too. But look at all these different articles. Excuse me. Check out all these articles. High temperatures lift the air conditioning stocks. Heat wave in the U.S. shatters record temperatures. People passing out on airplanes because of the heat. Death Valley's breaking records. All these places in the world are breaking records. There's even the heat index, which is how hot it feels. Not the actual temperature, but how hot it feels based on precipitation and pressure and stuff like that. Over in the Middle East, it was at 100 or over 150 degrees Fahrenheit, which is too hot to survive for human beings, right? So that's getting to be a growing concern in the world that we live in today. The movies have been warning us about these types of phenomenon, about the sun burning the earth and destroying the earth, and that's what we're starting to see, because I believe that the sun is not, it's a combination of the sun getting hotter and hotter as the focal point gets smaller and smaller, but also the pressure in our world increasing so much, especially as all of these gases are being released from the earth herself. Those gases add to and quicken the pressure that's building up in our world, which will eventually lead to a pressure release whenever the atmosphere depressurizes. And then we do have the day after tomorrow, which is the world storm, right? So the tropics are going into flux. The pressure is increasing in the world. The sun is getting hotter. And I think that the tropics now, like I said, the mainstream academics, they'll talk about the tropics. Basically it has something to do with like the tilting of the earth. And according to their model, in order for the tropics to shift like that, to shrink or expand, the earth would have to like be tilting or wobbling or something like erratically. Basically, like it wouldn't be constant, which is really weird. I think that's weird. According to mainstream academics, why would the earth not move constantly throughout a vacuum and a void of zero gravity? You know what I mean? Like unless something else has an effect on it, or something crashes into the earth to affect it or something like that. You know what they're trying to say? It's humans. Of course, they're going to take credit for it. They say that we're pumping out too much groundwater, and that's shaking the earth less or more or whatever, which is kind of ridiculous to me when you think about it. So all of these articles about the hottest temperatures in the world across is getting hotter and hotter. Rome shatters temperatures. Records break in Switzerland. Spain and Greece battle wildfires. All of these fires are erupting all over the place. Phoenix, like we talked about, 19 straight consecutive days of over 110 degrees heat, right? And let's check this one out. This one's an interesting video. So I'm going to check this video out with you guys so that you can look at it. This is from
Pedro, that's right. Mother Nature
Channel 5
is not
News.
messing around. From Southern California to South Florida, this record-breaking heat wave is baking millions of people across the country and around the globe. Climate scientists say extreme weather patterns like this are likely here to stay.
Okay, time out. Extreme weather patterns like this are likely here to stay, right? So as the pressure increases in our world from the earth giving off extra gases, and those gases soon will ionize, which will give rise to the beams of light that shoot up into the sky and stuff. They're already ionizing, and so we're seeing that, like we talked about last time with the fake UFO invasion or whatever, and people are seeing plasma balls moving about in the sky and stuff. That's ionized gas. So the more gas that's released by the Earth, and the more pressure that's created, and the more the electrical field becomes amplified, then the more we're going to see ghosts and UFOs and strange lights in the sky moving about erratically and stuff.
Under the Southern California sun, the heat is unrelenting.
Getting overheated like that, you start to get tired, irritable, angry, you're not thinking clearly.
Boom. Okay, I want to point that out too. This guy right here says whenever it gets hotter like this, and in addition, when the pressure is increasing and the atoms everywhere become agitated and whatnot, it has an effect on animal life and bugs and humanity as well. We become agitated in general. Not everybody does, but it amplifies whatever's happening. That internal condition, or whatever your type of spirit you have, whether it be happy or angry or whatever, it becomes amplified. So in general, in a world that's full of negativity and anger and stuff like that, those types of feelings are being amplified. So people are becoming uncomfortable and irritable and angry, and that's another sign of the apocalypse too.
And it's about to get even hotter. The National Weather Service extending its excessive heat warning through Saturday for inland areas, deserts, and
Can you guys hear this?
with
Let me know if you can hear
temperatures
this.
expected to top
I
triple digits.
hope you can hear it.
In Death Valley, the mercury reaching a blistering 128 degrees Fahrenheit Sunday.
128 degrees in Death Valley, and that's just in the place where they recorded it. I've seen other places where it was actually in the 130s.
Arms are burning. Your face is burning.
Yeah, your arms are burning, your face is burning. That's not good, okay? The sun isn't supposed to burn stuff. It's supposed to provide, a warm heat source to create life, not to destroy life, not to burn humans and stuff like that. This is the type of things we should be listening to whenever we listen to these news stories where people are saying things like, the sun is burning my face, the sun is burning my arms,
Temperature ever recorded on Earth was right here at 134 degrees in July 1913. In Phoenix, forget about it. A record-tying 18th straight day of temperatures at or above 110
That's
degrees.
in Phoenix, Arizona. 118, 115, 15, 14, 13, 12, 14, 14, 113, 113.
The forecast not encouraging. The power grid straining under the demand for electricity to power air conditioning.
So now, hold on.
Las
The
Vegas
power grid is also being affected, right? Because people are using more electricity to turn on air conditioners and stuff. I've got the AC on right now. Hopefully it doesn't bother anybody. But so more electricity is being used, which means it's going to become, the power grid's going to be used and depended upon more and more. But whenever we have electrical or electromagnetic fluctuations in the form of what academics is calling these CMEs or coronal mass ejections, or just the Earth going into magnetic flux in various areas, right, especially closer to ley lines and stuff like that, then it's going to affect the power grids. People all over the place, you're going to start seeing the power just shut off in places where they're going into an electromagnetic flux.
Now sizzling under triple-digit temps, where emergency rooms are reporting an increase in heat-related illnesses and injuries.
Second degree, very common. If you go to the pool and you step on the cement, it's probably 140 degrees.
You go to the pool and step on the cement, it's about 140 degrees, right? So the sun is heating up the Earth, right? I can't stress that enough. The sun, I believe, from my perspective and research and all of that, is getting hotter and hotter, which helps to explain why it's going through a color spectrum shift, why it's left being yellow and it stopped being orange a long time ago, and now it's blistering white and it's super extremely hot. I've had people I know ask me like, hey, is it really hot where you are too? People are starting to take notice of the heat, and this isn't just, it just happens to be a hot summer. No. This is abnormally record-breaking, record-shattering temperatures that are getting hotter every year, just like that bar graph we looked at, right? Where it gets hotter and hotter. Just because it calms down for a second doesn't mean that we shouldn't take the entire pattern into consideration.
From Southern California to South Florida, nearly a third of the American population is under heat advisories and warnings, with record-breaking temperatures impacting
Look at that white sun. Look at that. Okay? Check it out.
tens of millions of people. Temperatures in waters off Miami, normally in the 80s, are now in the 90s, threatening coral reefs and the ocean's ecosystem.
Huge. We're going to talk about this one next. Okay, so not just the land heating up, not just, things catching on fire and all those gases that are being released or, combusting or being ionized or whatever, and also helping to spark many of these fires and whatnot, but also the water. The water heating up is huge. It's actually going to be a worse effect in the long run than the land heating up, okay? It's going to be way worse than people stepping on the hot pool deck and burning their feet or whatever. The waters, the ocean waters, I'm going to show you in just a minute the correlation to biblical prophecies about the ocean getting hotter and hotter.
Miami-Dade issuing its first ever heat warning.
I feel hotter this year compared to any of the other years. I don't remember it being this hot when I was a kid.
In the past week or two, if we look at the global temperature around the world, we
Right.
very likely had the hottest days in recorded history.
Yes.
Noah Diffenbaugh is a Stanford University climate scientist.
So all these people, they're going to start, people are going to start playing in the water and going outside and stuff. And then they're going to start caking on a bunch of sunscreen, which is probably not a good idea. But pretty soon it's going to get so hot, they're not going to be able to go outside. If I'm correct in, the idea that the sun is actually getting hotter and hotter up there in our sky, not too far away. The day was going to come when people will have to stay inside. And because most people are kind of retarded these days, the governments of the world will probably issue a decree and a command saying, for your own protection, as, we're all used to that, right? Hearing those particular words, for your own protection, you're being ordered to stay inside. Do not go outside unless you have, certain protective measures or whatever, or only in emergencies, or only when you need to go shopping, and then there will be extensions to all of those, right? By extension, the grocery stores will only be open from this time to this time, and then of course that'll give rise to looting and pillaging and people being angry and stuff like that too, right? This is all a domino effect. So we're looking at these omens that are the first, some of the first dominoes to really start, leading to the apocalypse.
He says we're likely to experience more severe heat more often.
Likely to experience more severe heat more often. Pay attention to that. This is the cycle we're going into, where we go into the blue star Kachina, right? Now the other cycle is whenever the world actually gets colder and colder and colder. As daylight gets broader and broader instead of shrinking and shrinking. Whenever it gets broader and broader, that leads us into that takes us closer to a deluge. That takes us closer to the earth flooding. We're not going into the apocalypse by water. We're going into the apocalypse by fire, or through the sun, basically.
Evidence that global warming is the primary driver of that increase in the frequency of severe heat, the increase in the co-occurrence.
Okay, time out. Where does the heat come from? We all know it comes from the sun, right? I mean, there's pressure, which increases the heat as well. But that actual gigantic burning ball of light or whatever that is just above our heads up there is getting hotter. We can track this. We can look at it. We can see the color changes and the color spectrum shift. It's not just global warming like the earth itself is just heating up, right? It's the sky that's heating up, basically. Check it out.
Of severe heat.
And it's not just heat.
Yep.
The northeast U.S.
Gonna see a bunch of that.
by rain over the weekend, leading to severe flooding from New Hampshire to Pennsylvania.
Also, you're going to start to see, it's not, now imagine, right? If the sun is heating up, it's moving around, right? So as it moves around, it's going to create these little swirls and pockets and huge differentials between hot and cold, right? Which is going to affect the weather and the pressure all over the place. So you'll have huge storms and then days when it's just blistering hot and there's no clouds in the sky or whatever. And then in addition, you're going to see a lot more of the earth, potholes or whatever they're called, sinkholes, right? As these gases are being released and the earth starts to like crumble in different places. And the waters are going to erode and stuff too.
5 people killed by severe storms, including a
Severe
mother
storms.
who drowned after the banks of a creek swelled and swept her away. Rescuers still searching for her 2 children, a 2-year-old girl and her 9-year-old brother. All right, this extreme heat.
All right, that's enough. So extreme heat, basically. Now let's talk about some of the implications of this extreme heat, especially in regards to the ocean. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but here's some different articles that talk about how the Earth's ocean color, the color of the oceans across the world, all of the ocean, are changing from blue to green. I kid you not. I don't know how many people were aware of this, but you can look it up. This particular article right here says more than half of the deep blue sea is turning green. But scientists aren't sure why. Well, that's not true. I'm a scientist and I'm pretty sure why. At least I've got a good grasp on it, I feel. In the past 2 decades, 56% of Earth's oceans have become greener. Check out these articles. Let me just scooch these on over here, and we'll just peruse the internet. Earth's oceans are changing color due to climate change. NASA satellites show more than half of the Earth's oceans are green. The oceans are turning green. This is huge. Whenever you have the whole world changing colors, that's a huge omen, right? We're going to go into a color spectrum shift as well. It's already shifting right now, but right now we have the benefit of such a broad, beautiful range of colors. That's going to stop one of these days after the apocalypse. Okay, the entire sky is going to change into the red spectrum, where things will be more monochromatic for quite some time. So enjoy your different colors while you have them. Enjoy this spectrum and enjoy, all of the fluctuations and stuff and all the good side that comes with all of this, because you won't get to have it for so long. Pretty soon you'll be telling your ancestors and your children's children's after the apocalypse, when you survive, you'll be telling them stories about the color blue. You'll be trying to explain different colors that they've never seen before or even heard of, right? Oceans are turning greener due to climate change. Some oceans are becoming greener thanks to climate change, blah, blah, blah. Oceans are turning greener due to the Earth getting hotter. Oceans are turning greener. You could look up, there's hundreds of these articles that talk about the ocean turning greener. Now, let's ask ourselves the question that I love to ask when I learn something new. What are the implications, right? What domino will this hit next, right? What other puzzle pieces does the ocean turning green touch, right? How does it affect other aspects and avenues of our world? So let's check it out. Now, let's ask the question. Let's do some studying. Now, why does the ocean, or why does green algae, which is a big part of why the ocean is turning green, is because there's algae that's growing, right? Algae starts to grow more and more whenever the water gets warmer and warmer, right? And inversely, fish start to die off because the warmer the water Holly, good to see you, Holly. The warmer that the water gets in the ocean, the less oxygen is dissolved in the water for the fish to breathe. So the fish start suffocating and dying in mass. So what you can also expect is death in the ocean. All these different forms of life are starting to die off, and it's affecting the ecosystem, right? As the algae starts to grow in the ocean because of the rising temperature of the water, the fish in turn will also start to die. 1, because they're suffocating, and 2, because this algae becomes toxic. If you get too much of it and the water gets too bright, watch, let me show you what I mean. It says, how does green algae turn red? In conditions of high salinity, that means salty water, and light intensity, keep that in mind, the microalgae turns red due to the production of the protective carotenoids in the cells. Carotenoids are, basically what's responsible for turning carrots an orange color or a red color, right? So let me explain this in layman's terms. When you have salt water that has microorganisms, algae inside of it, and you amplify the light that is going into the water, or the sun becomes brighter, right? The green algae turns red, which gives us red tide and stuff like that, right? So let's move on to this next implication. Some green microalgae species have the protective red carotenoid for high light intensity during daytime, which means that during periods of extremely bright daytime, you might actually live in areas where you can watch the water change from green to red, because the algae's basically protecting itself from the, it's very sensitive to light and stuff, right? So it changes from green to red. Now, check this out. This is interesting too. High light intensity increases the concentrations of whatever that is, vitamin B or something. Therefore, we propose that although red algae have evolved a common response to high light stress, that means the sun getting brighter, by accumulating B carotene or whatever. So let me just explain this in layman's terms, okay? The world's oceans are more than half of the world's ocean, which is just one ocean, right? The remnant of the last flood. The world's ocean is turning green. More than half of it has turned green. So it stands to reason that if it's correct that the ocean waters are getting hotter and that the sun is getting brighter, if the sun is indeed getting brighter, then what can happen next is that the oceans turn red. That the oceans go from green, which they are now, surprise and shock to everybody, right? To turning red. Just like it says in the Bible. In the book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 3, it talks about the second angel that pours out his bowl of judgment upon the earth. It says the second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, or turned blood red, basically, right? So this has happened before, right? Even in the Bible, whenever you read about the 10 plagues of Egypt, whenever Moses went before the Pharaoh, one of those is that Moses said, hey, if you don't let my people go, I'm going to turn the waters red. And the Nile turned red, blood red is how it's described. Now, is it actually blood or whatever? No, it doesn't have to be blood. It's just a huge, big, fat deal that the waters are going from blue to green. And then next up on the list is red. Now, check this out. When the waters do turn red and we have all of this red tide in the water, we're going to get to this crazy thing in just a second. But whenever the waters turn red like that, that's a whole bunch of algae that starts to release toxins and chemicals into the air, which kill marine life, which is also what the Bible says happens next. A third of all life in the ocean died. Now imagine all of that life dying and becoming dead and decomposing. It's going to release its own forms of bacteria and stuff, and it's going to start changing the ecosystem that we live in. It's a huge, sensitive domino effect. But it can also kill people, right? All of those different toxins and stuff that are released by the red tide, they can make people sick. They can cause respiratory infections and diseases and problems inside of human beings. If too much of that red tide builds and builds and builds and it releases all of those toxins into the air, then people will start having respiratory problems. So that's another omen and another sign to keep an eye out for. All right. High five for that one, right? I mean, the ocean's turning blood red. Being able to actually explain these ancient prophecies and, using modern research and comparative mythology and just opening our minds and being balanced and taking in all of the pieces that we've been given, picking up those breadcrumbs as we make our way home is exciting to me. I'm excited. I don't know how exciting that is to all of you, but I get really excited by it. I'm thankful that we get to check these things out. Now, this one right here is, there's, like I said, there's all these monster sea creatures. This one says, divers come across an enormous earthquake fish. A viral video shows a group of divers discovering an enormous deep sea earthquake fish off of the coast. As you can see, they're not in the deep sea. Right? They're totally not in the deep sea whatsoever. It's an oarfish. This is a huge, gigantic fish. And like I said, you're starting to see these gigantic deep sea creatures make their way up to the surface. Sometimes they can look pretty monstrous too. But basically, it says that due to their shape, oarfish resemble sea serpents and are considered harbingers of earthquakes. That means omens. of earthquakes and misfortune in Japanese mythology. So in Japan, they realized that there was a connection between these fish starting to come to the surface and be seen when they usually are way down in the depths of the ocean, and cataclysms, right? They're harbingers, they're signs, they're wonders of the ocean that make their way up to the surface, right? I wonder why. Well, the ocean waters are changing. The life in the ocean is starting to change, and something's causing these deep sea creatures to feel like they can, like their boundary for coming up, right, and coming to the surface, like their boundary is getting higher and higher and higher, so that they can come up to the surface, right? And pretty soon, this is also an omen of inner Earth creatures that are being able to come up into the surface world. Which, if you think this thing looks monstrous, you just wait. Just wait until inner Earth phantazoids and otherworldly creatures make their way to the surface world. All right, cool. And then we've got this one's pretty interesting too. So this one, it was about a giant green fireball.
Early this morning,
check this out.
The celestial show was visible across several states. Meteorologist Amber Wheeler
Look at
has
that.
some of the best video from our area.
Let's check it out.
Lucky for us, those who did miss the fireball have video to see. According to the American Meteor Society, many reports were sent in. You even sent in your sighting.
Okay, so check out all these different places that this huge green fireball was seen flying through the sky, basically, right? They're talking about how it's probably a meteor or something. Ultimately, I don't feel like they know for sure, but this is another type of light in the sky, anomalous lights in the sky that people are starting to see all over the place. Remember this, because this is going to become normal. They're going to start saying another one. This one was purple. This one was green. Oh, this one is red. When they start turning red, get ready. Like when you start seeing these ones and they go from green to red, anytime that things change from green to red, start getting ready. Okay, the oceans are going from green to red. The fireballs are going to change from green to red. The auroras are going to change from green to red. Watch out when stuff starts changing red.
Came from anywhere between Texas and Florida, but there are now reports coming in as far away as California. So this was a big event, but check this out.
Huge
the fireball was caught by this security camera in Thibodeau from Chantel Danos.
See the light up there?
You can see how it just lights up the sky and the neighborhood like it's in the middle of the day for just a
did you see that?
couple of seconds. We have more for you. This is from meteorologist
watch
Brandon
this one.
Lashbrook from our Fox sister station in Baton Rouge.
Boom.
This was caught on
Look
his
at that.
dash cam.
Now
The
that doesn't
fireball
strike
lights
me
up
as
the
like
sky
something
before
falling from the sky at high speeds. I don't know. I feel like it would go much faster than
We're
that.
dashing behind the few clouds off in the distance. That'll, of course, wake you up before you get to work. Next, we head to the North Shore.
Okay, no. Hold on. I want to rewind that. Can I rewind that? Yes, good. Hold on. I want to point something out too.
That'll, of course, wake you up before you get to work. Next, we head to the North Shore.
All right, shoot. Hold on. Let me rewind that bad boy.
Dash cam. The fireball
I gotta catch
lights
it.
up the sky before.
There it is. Okay, now look at the direction that it's going, right? Given the academic model, I just want some of you to think about this, right? Do you ever see falling stars or meteors or meteorites or whatever going up? You ever see them going at any other angle other than like coming down to the earth? I just wanted to point that out because it stands to reason that if our world is, a giant globular mess and it's spinning and wobbling and tilting and flying and this and that we would see on occasion objects flying upwards as they cross the other direction. They go the other way, but they don't. They always go down towards the ground. Another thing I want to point out is that electricity does that too. Okay, electricity naturally becomes attracted to try to ground itself to the earth. Okay, so if you have ball lightning and stuff, or any type of electricity up there in the atmosphere, it wants to come down towards the earth. It's up there swimming around in the electromagnetic currents and whatnot, right? But when those currents give out or they're weak and that power source becomes amplified and stronger, it can reach further down, and then pretty soon it'll come down towards the earth, which is what we can expect during the plasma apocalypse. What's up, Barry Kelly in the chat? It says, good point, Jay. Good. Oh, right on. Appreciate it. All right, cool. So those were just some of the things, right? The huge takeaways from this one would be the heat getting hotter and hotter, right? Be prepared for it to get hotter. They're telling you right now, like, oh, this is now normal. This weather pattern, you can expect it to continue like this, which means it's going to get even hotter and even hotter to the point where it burns people, and they're warning you to stay out of the sun. right? They're not doing that yet. Everyone's flocking to the oceans. Not a good idea. People are being bitten by sharks and attacked by sea otters and all kinds of weird stuff. As a matter of fact, I've got some screenshots here on my phone of some articles that I took. Oh yeah, 50 whales die after washing ashore. Let's check that out real quick. I'm gonna close out some of these other articles. But I hope that the ocean's changing color is a huge wake-up call, okay? All this stuff, this is interesting. We'll continue to talk about this, but keep your eye on the sun, on the moon, which is also getting brighter, and they say that it's getting further away, which means that light in the sky is getting smaller, which means the light is becoming amplified, which is the same thing that's happening with the point of focus that we call the sun, right? So hold on, let me type this in. I'm gonna open up a new little page here. 50 whales die washing ashore. Boom. All right, cool. So over 50 whales found dead on a Scottish beach, and the worst mass stranding in the area, right? All of these different animals are starting to wash up on the shores and die. Ocean life is starting to die in mass all over the place. Matt Kubas, what's up, Matt Kubas? Good to see you, man. Thanks for the super chat donation. Appreciate you. But yeah, so this is just one of them, right? 50 whales die after they wash up ashore. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting too. I want to talk about this one real quick. Hold on. Let me do this. Push over Yosemite. Is it Yosemite? Yeah. Rocks. Okay, cool. So check this out. This is messed up. Like, I don't like this one, but it says, if you see these, push them over. And they actually have a picture of like, you know how people stack rocks, make little rock piles or whatever, right? In Yosemite, they're telling people to knock those down all over the place. The government is saying like, hey, you need to, it's called a cairn. A rock cairn, basically. They say, unfortunately, this dramatically oversized rock cairn is a mark of human impact, and it's distracting in the wilderness. So people like to put these rocks and balance them on top of one another, which is awesome because, you know, that's a sign of a nice, steady, unmoving world that we live on. But there's other reasons that people put those rocks up, okay? It wasn't just artistic in times past. Those rock cairns, those rock piles or whatever that people used to stack, they were markers for explorers. When people were out exploring, they would put these markers and then they would be able to tell their family and friends like, hey, look for this marker. That's where I'm going. Or they would orient those markers to certain directions whenever they were going on trips and stuff, or pilgrimages and whatnot, right? So the government's telling everybody, oh, knock these down. These are all distracting or whatever, which they're messing up navigation for many people, for many explorers. So that's an interesting one too. Let's see what else we got here. Dolphin rams and bites Japanese beachgoers. Let's do that one. Dolphin bites Japanese. Boom. All right, let's go to news actually. All right, swimmers are... Wait, where's this one say? Swimmers injured in a dolphin attacks on Japanese beach. So animals starting to attack, especially those animals that are in the ocean, becoming agitated and even in some instances looking like they're becoming delirious, right? Could have something to do with that algae and, you know, the ecosystems changing suddenly and drastically over the past couple of decades. Japanese beach sees a string of aggressive dolphin attacks on swimmers. There was also a shark attack recently up in New York. There's been many shark attacks. Let's check this one out too. So the animals are starting to go nuts. That's all you got. That's the takeaway from that. Okay, the people are also going nuts, in case you haven't noticed. But we're not the only ones. The animal world is becoming agitated too. Huge starfish. Let's check out the huge starfish in the news. A huge starfish. Look at that. Beachgoers shocked by massive starfish spotted on a Texas beach. Let's check this out. I actually want to see a picture of this. Look at this. Is there a video?
Finally, another creepy crawly on Texas beaches.
Look at that.
Christine sent us this video and
look at this gigantic starfish
on the shores of Port Aransas.
Oh my God.
This is a gray sea
I have no idea.
star.
How do you freaking mute that? Anyways, look at this. Look at this gigantic starfish, right? Like we talked about with that huge apocalypse fish or whatever it was called, right? Doomsday fish. All the gigantic sea creatures that normally are down at the bottom of the ocean are starting, or in deeper waters at the very least, right? They're starting to make their ways up, and we're starting to see these. Now, take it as an omen, okay? Regardless of whatever the explanation, there's always people have their explanations and they just minimize every anomalous activity that happens in our world. Take it as an omen. What is happening is that the world is showing us, right before the apocalypse, the past, present, and future start to all meet. They slam into each other, basically, as far as omens go, okay? So we're seeing shrinking happening in the animal kingdom and in the humans. We're way smaller than we used to be, but we're also showing omens that gigantism is soon to return to our world whenever the fresh oxygen from down inside of the earth is released and ionized and fills up the world once more. And the pressure is released, right? Just taking all that pressure off of us, allowing humans to grow back to gigantic proportions once more. Let's see what else I got here. The heat index reached 152 degrees in the Middle East, which is nearly at the limit for human survival, which is pretty interesting. And the Persian Gulf reported 150. Let's just check that one out. Why not? Let's see. Persian? How do you spell that? Gulf. 152 degrees. Let's just see if it says that. Okay, so it says, man, hold on, let me see if I can scooch this down. It says, at the Persian Gulf International Airport on Iran's southwestern coast, the heat index, which measured how hot it really feels outside based on both temperature and humidity, hit an eye-popping high of 152 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 66.7 degrees Celsius. That's insane. And this is just the beginning, right? Let's see what else we got. I talked about the doomsday fish. The sun's activity is peaking sooner than expected. They also say that too. So the sun goes through these different solar cycles and grand minimums and all that fun stuff. Well, they thought it was going to peak in 2025, but now they're forecasting that the sun's activity is peaking in 2024. Record-breaking temperatures in Grand Junction, Colorado, many places across the world. Cannibal eruption from the sun may disturb the Earth's magnetic field. Let's check that one out. Cannibal eruption from the sun. Boom. Okay, so it says here the nickname cannibal comes from the union of two flares, and that it's why the scientific community warns that a geomagnetic storm is likely to occur. This is because a coronal mass ejection is a cloud of plasma that is moved by solar winds so that it can crash into the Earth. Here's what's happening. When they say geomagnetic storm, right? It's a fluctuation in the Earth's magnetism in various places, especially in those places that are commonly called dragon lines or ley lines, etc. It's going into flux, and that flux, all of those various fluctuations across the world are exploding. It's invisible to most humans, okay, but explodes into these electromagnetic flux, which is going to lead to like the power grids going down in places where they have larger ones. It's going to lead to animals beaching themselves and becoming confused and not knowing where they're going. Bats acting crazy. Anything that uses, maybe not bats in echolocation, but anything that follows the electromagnetic currents of the Earth itself, right? And basically, the Earth is going into a magnetic flux in all these different places. It's all starting to go into different flux. And that's going to culminate in one gigantic flux, a huge flux where the entire Earth goes into flux. And that's whenever it brings about what I call the plasma apocalypse, where the Earth will go into a neutral point as far as the electromagnetics go. Instead of tilting and fluxing, it'll go boom and hit a neutral point. When that neutral point hits is whenever our protective barrier up there in the sky goes down, or what people call the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere goes down, and all of that plasma or coronal mass ejections or whatever from the sun, if you're an academic, right, those are allowed to come into our world, and they spiral down in the form of plasma, and they want to ground themselves, just like you saw that green fireball, right? Cannibal eruption from the sun may disrupt the Earth's magnetic field. It says a geomagnetic storm is the alteration of the Earth's magnetic environment. This means whenever the magnetic field that usually surrounds our Earth starts to be distorted. That's exactly what leads to the plasma apocalypse. Shark bites a man sitting in the water at the Florida beach. So let's check that one out real quick. Florida shark bites. I thought it was in New York. There's been a lot in New York lately too. Max just donated 5 memberships in the chat. Right on, Max. Super appreciate you. Max being stellar as always. Sorry, check this out. It says Florida beach shark. Second shark bite reported on the Florida beach in as many days, right? So this is just another example, right? All these shark bites that are increasing and happening as the agitation in the ocean happens. The orcas, we talked about the orcas that are attacking boats last week, right? We talked about all these different killer whales that are attacking boats, tearing them to pieces and sinking boats out in off the waters of Spain, basically, right? And it seems like a lot of these animals are just getting more and more aggravated in the ocean. So pay attention to what's going on in the oceans. The water's getting hotter, etc. They're saying the Earth's tilt has increased. This one says the Earth has tilted 31.5 inches, and that shouldn't happen. Well, yeah, that's called a sign and an omen. What else we got here? Brutal heat wave. I think you all can agree that there's everything's getting hotter. Death Valley is approaching 130 degrees. The Florida ocean temperatures peaked to almost 100 degrees amid a heat wave. And people are saying you can't even cool off in the ocean, right? People are trying to get to the ocean and be in the water to cool off, and they say you can't. Oh, this one's interesting. Hold on. Workers might have to ditch the 9-to-5 workday. Hold on. Let's check that one out. Let's do that. Ditch 9-to-5 workday. Time to ditch the 9-to-5 workday. Let's look up news. Boom. Okay, perfect. This is the exact article that I was actually looking at. So workers might have to ditch the 9-to-5 workday for the 6-to-2 workday. This is when it says workers, it means slaves. So let's just remind ourselves of that. Okay, shall we? We're not workers. Okay, we're working for somebody else and we don't really want to. So that's called slavery. Workers, slaves, might have to ditch the 9-to-5 for the 6-to-2. Why? Let's check this out. Because of climate change, because it's getting so hot during the daytime that they want people to start going to their jobs way early in the morning and waking up. People are already starting to do this in places like New Mexico and the southern latitudes. Farmers and other people who have to be out there in the sun all day long that are like, picking, pulling up plants from the ground like onions and stuff like that. They're waking up way earlier in the middle of the night so that they don't have to be out during the deadly hot sun. So now they're starting to tell us like, oh, well, this is good news. You'll get off work earlier or whatever. This is the beginning before they start telling you don't go outside at all. Or if you do go outside, you're only allowed to go outside during this time and this time, because after that, it's going to be death conditions. It's going to be too hot. It's going to be, bad for you. And then of course the governments of the world are going to step in for your protection because people are retarded. They will go out in the sun. You'll hear all these crazy stories about what kind of people are doing, what kind of stuff people are doing. Time to ditch the 9-to-5, so that you're not out in the sun so long. Actually, does it say sun? Let me search. Sun or heat? Hold on. Let's see if it says heat. Heat. There we go. Oh yeah. Businesses may need to switch up their staff's working pattern to cope with uncomfortable heat levels. Yeah, like that one guy said, it was burning your face, burning your arms. It's burning. These are the words that they're describing for what the sun is doing. It is burning. And now they're saying, well, maybe you guys should just wake up earlier. And, and then they're going to try to spin it like, good news, everyone. You get more time during the day, which is not true because you're going to have to go to bed way earlier to compensate. And then that's going to throw off your natural circadian rhythms and what time you naturally go to sleep and what time you naturally wake up, which is going to add to agitation and people being angry and frustrated. And the store hours are all going to start changing and everything's starting to change, and it's going to start changing extremely fast. Keep an eye out for that. And that's it. That's pretty much it. Well, you know what? I think we'll do comments and questions and stuff another time. I feel like we had a pretty good presentation today. Please keep your eyes on the sun, on the ocean, on this heat that is rapidly increasing, right? So everything happens in flux. Okay. It's all going into flux. So you should see like if there's a really high increase in heat, if it does come back down, look out. It's going to cause huge storms and weather patterns and stuff, but these are all dominoes that hit one another. They're all puzzle pieces that are interconnected. So we should ask ourselves, if this is happening, what other puzzle pieces could it touch? What what other parts of life or areas of life could this touch and have an adverse effect on, right? That starts leading to things like apocalyptic events and prophecies coming true in our world. All right, sweet. Well, that's my presentation for today. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye. Okay, sweet. I'm back. So hold on. Let me get rid of this right here. Let's see. Two, pow. Sweet. All right, cool. So welcome to the after party. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me right now. I tried to give like a little, I was trying to say some stuff, but I guess people couldn't hear me. That was weird. I don't know. The microphone was turned on. Can you hear me now? 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 The shirtless. Yes, I remember. So there was an episode whenever at the end, I didn't realize, like that my camera was on and I had my shirt off and I was just chilling at home because it was a 24-hour marathon. And at the end of it, it totally caught me. I was like, oh, snap. I was trying to duck and stuff. I wasn't ready for that. That was funny. Yeah, that was a good time, man. Now hopefully people don't, anyways, they probably won't even find it. Anyways, it's fine. So check this out. This is what I was going to say for all the people who are still sticking around is, I've been invited to be a guest, tomorrow, actually. So tomorrow, Wednesday, at 5 o'clock my time, I'm going to be a guest of Tommy Truthful and his buddy Donut over on their channels. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he's been in the chat a couple of times. He's got his own YouTube channel and stuff, and he's got a pretty huge following over on, like he's got Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff, all these other social media platforms. But he's, another fellow truther who reached out to me and emailed me through my business email over in the community section, and he's invited me to be a guest tomorrow. So I did want to give a huge shout out. I might put something about it in the community section later on, but I'm going to be a guest over at his channel. So I was just wanted to cordially invite all of you, if you'd like to join us over there tomorrow, 5 o'clock Mountain Time approximately, and come show them some love. Come represent the Good Vibe Tribe, and leave some purple hearts from our tribe over here over to theirs, right? I would like to spread the love, okay? I think there's too many channels out there that have been fighting and, gossiping, and there's all this infighting in different truther communities. And I really, I want to do my thing. Instead of focusing on the problem, I want to focus on the solution. I want to be a part of the remedy instead of a part of the poison. So big love to everybody, all the different truther channels out there, no matter what you believe in, no matter who you are. Much props for trying your best. Much props for trying to, for having good intentions and trying to make the world a better place. Because I think we all do. We all do our best. Especially in our own eyes, right? So come over and leave a bunch of love over at Tommy Truthful's channel. Max, Max is cool. I love Max, man. You're such a good dude. Thank you, Max. High five. Now, I'm really going to go this time. So come check it out. And tell him JayDreamerZ sent you. Tell him you came over from the Good Vibe Tribe. Share the love and join the conversation. We're going to talk about the plasma apocalypse in detail. A lot. I'm pretty excited about it. And if anybody else wants me to, to be a guest or whatever, either a public speaker or on your channels or whatever, just shoot me an email. Okay. It's not an automatic yes to everybody who asks, but shoot me an email and we'll talk about it. All right, cool. I don't have an outro prepared. I didn't think I was going to come back, so it's going to be a hard cut. So I'll see you guys soon. What, Sunday? What's today? I forgot what today is. Oh, and I'm gonna think of another. I'm gonna do something special for Mondays too. I also want to say that, right? I haven't really been doing a lot of Monday stuff because the mods and members was weird and that was my fault. So I'm gonna return that, or I'm gonna replace that with another segment on Mondays because I like doing Mondays stuff. So I have not forgot about it.